Welcome back, Flyers Nitty Gritty fans, to Getting Gritty with It with your host, Yariv, Wolok, my partner in crime, as always, Vasili, Gianarakos, my friend. How you doing, buddy?
Doing really well, Yariv. There's a lot of stuff to talk about Flyers-wise. I mean, we're seeing a team continue some of their consistent play with their Buffalo outing, and then we're seeing a team against LA kind of do the opposite. So we can address both and then just get into a bunch of different things just surrounding players and things like that. So it's going to be a fun episode, buddy. How you doing?
I'm doing well, man. You're absolutely right. A lot of good stuff to talk about. A lot of exciting stuff to talk about. This team is kind of middling and, kind of where we thought they would be to some degree. I would say they've gone on kind of this losing stretch, but not all of these games should have been losses, right? Like kind of their record's a little bit worse than it should be. Again, neither one of us expected this team to be at the top of the division or to be at the top of the league, but we still expect them in that playoff bubble range. I say we're still in that category. But obviously injuries have kind of come into play a little bit too, but that will for everyone, and things will be up and down all year round. So nobody should expect to panic or get overly excited at all. Though I still stand by my Sanheim statements, and we can talk a little bit more into that. Before we get started, just want to remind everybody, please give us a like. If you like the show, obviously, subscribe, hit the bell for notifications, go to iTunes and Spotify, give us a rating if you can, and follow us there. Again, we release the episode simultaneously on video and audio together. So again, all your support has been amazing. Thank you guys so much. Also want to give a shout out to our sponsor, Jim Steaks at 4th and South. They still are not open, but I did look this up. They are doing DoorDash deliveries, and that is exclusive to DoorDash. So if you guys are on DoorDash, I believe you can still get yourself a Jim's Steaks cheesesteak. So support them through that. I'm sure they could use the support right now until they get open. I don't know what the delay is exactly. I haven't talked to the owner or anything like that. But we are doing this pro bono. We've been doing it pro bono for a while, which I'm cool with. I don't care. Because we don't do this for money. But yeah, please give them a shout out, and check them out. All right. Got a lot of good stuff to talk about, but within that we have some success and then some shit game, let's put it that way. But let's go with the first one. So the Flyers did get their revenge on the Buffalo Sabres, a game where I would say they didn't dominate in the same way as far as like play on the ice. It was definitely a little bit more balanced, but Flyers did win this one 5-1. And the game that they lost 5-2, they were absolutely dominant in that game and still lost 5-2. I would say the Flyers probably should have won both of those. Buffalo, a team that's about where the Flyers are in talent and organization, just standing. Even though they do have Dahlin and they do have Tage Thompson and some good players out there, talk about all the time. It's about having an entire good team, not just a couple players. So you can see that team is about where the Flyers are, and I would argue the Flyers are better coached, and it showed. The Flyers also have the best goalie of the two, even though Yoki Haru played phenomenal. Was it Yoki Haru?
Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen.
Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen.
Don't worry, both long Finnish names. So
yes, screw them up. I could tell I said the wrong one when I was thinking about it. But yeah, Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen played a very solid game against the Flyers first time around, and then the Flyers did get their revenge in a 5-1 win. Again, more scoring all around. Brink had a goal and an assist. Konechny had a goal. Hathaway had a goal. I believe he got the team star of the game, got to wear the dog head covering. Lawton had a goal. Ryan Poehling had an assist. I think that was his first point of the year. Delorier had assist. Farabee, another 2 assists. He's done very well offensively this year. Belpedio got his first ever career NHL goal, which is really awesome to see. And then Ersan finally had his first good game of the season and helped bring the Flyers a victory. What do you have to say about the Sabres game?
Well, just being there, I think seeing the team and the way they came out, it was a refreshing kind of change in the trend because the 3 prior games, they started off very slow. They didn't really get their legs under them. until about 10 minutes into the game, and we kind of pointed that out and we mentioned that even on the last show. So it is good to see the team have a quick start and kind of change it up, right? I mean, they scored 2 goals in 91 seconds. That's usually not what's going to happen. I mean, when you do start off quick, your goal is, establish the forecheck, get things going. But I think the fact that they were able to start quick, get the lead early, it not only helped the team just get into the mindset and the play of pace they were trying to look for, but also helps a young goalie in Sam Ersson, who has, a bit of leeway to work with to start a game after not really playing his best in limited action so far. But yeah, I did ask, Scott Lawton and John Tortorella, like how important it was for the team to have a quick start, and if that was something emphasized. That is something that they mentioned that the team was focused on, just kind of continuing their strong play from the previous game. Tortorella specifically mentioned that the team wasn't playing bad. There was obviously certain things to correct, but it's more just duplicating the process from the Wednesday night game against the Sabres and ensuring, okay, well, we're out shooting a team 40-15. It's not the process that's a problem. It's more just being able to capitalize on our scoring chances. And the Flyers did that in this game versus the Buffalo game on Wednesday. That's really the difference, right? Like the Flyers and their opportunities, their odd man rushes on Friday, they capitalized on their chances and they scored. And Ersson, helped them out and made some big saves as well. Made a really nice save on Tage Thompson after the Flyers did allow a goal in the third period, and it was only 4-1. And, Thompson has a one-on-one kind of look at him, one of the best shooters in the league. And if he lets that goal and it ends up being 4-2, could be a totally different game. So I think the Flyers overall, that was probably one of their best games of the season. They played really well. I thought standouts for me were that Lawton, Brink, Farabee line. They were really good. Farabee specifically, like the zone entry that he made for the first goal was beautiful, and then just the pass between Lawton and Brink kind of going back and forth. But overall, I mean, that's probably a complete game for the Flyers, and that's more often than not the way they would like to play against most teams if possible, right? Just quick starts, getting their forecheck game going, and then being able to capitalize on their chances. And I think maybe the only thing you can look at is the power play, which we'll get into later, that they didn't capitalize as well in the power play in that game. But that's kind of been a constant theme throughout the season so far.
Which game are you talking about at this
point? Yeah.
Yeah. No, well said. It was a good game to watch, and it was nice to see the Flyers respond. Obviously, they were without Carter Hart and Sean Couturier, obviously without Stahl and Ristolainen in those games as well. There's a lot of misses for them, and yet they still showed up. We will talk about injuries and updates on that. Some pretty good news actually. But it's good to see that a team can withstand injuries and kind of play through them and still bring their A game. And then let's roll into the next game. And this is a game where I said the Anaheim game was the most frustrating to watch for me. No, it was definitely this LA game. Not because I actually don't even think they played as poorly as the score. And, Cal Peterson's going to get a ton of hate for having his first start. Obviously, they put Peterson up against his former team, hoping that he'd have a big game. I don't think he played as poorly as the 5-0 score indicates, but the Flyers really weren't able to do much. They did have some good scoring opportunities, weren't able to bury any of them, and LA just looked like the better team from beginning to end. Yeah. At no point in this game did it feel like the Flyers even had a chance to win. Go ahead.
I think for Peterson, like, you can't really even blame him. Obviously, he hasn't had good numbers in the AHL or anything, and you're not expecting him to come up to the NHL, a level up, and light the world on fire. True. But I mean, it was 2-0 halfway through the third or halfway through the second. Like, he gave the team a chance to win. It's just certain aspects and breakdowns they didn't really help him out on, right? Like the third goal, the Kaliev goal, maybe that's the one you'd like to see him have back, just because it's kind of over the glove there. But other than that, like, if you're a team that doesn't score any goals on the night, I don't care who's in net for you. I'm not blaming the goalie on that.
100%.
Right? So, I mean, he needs some scoring support. And that's just not something the Flyers were able to give him, right? And I think it does go back to the power play, which we'll get into after this kind of in depth here. But I mean, you're 0 for 4 on the power play. It's 2-0, midway through the second. You have some power play opportunities. If you can just score on one of those, it really changes up the whole game. And then the Flyers are unable to capitalize, and the Kings end up scoring two more goals in the second there. And then the game kind of gets away from them. Obviously, the big news in this one is Cam York getting benched. He did not have a good game whatsoever. A couple turnovers and just plays on his part that end up leading to goals against. I believe he was a -3. So, I mean, on the stat sheet, it even kind of shows that. And obviously, York is a young defenseman still, though, right? He's only 22 years old. He's playing top minutes in the NHL. There is going to be still a learning curve here. So I think it's nothing to panic about, but it's more just what were the mistakes made for York? And it needs to be a learning experience to the extent that, okay, these were certain things that I cannot do while playing these types of minutes when I'm playing against, top echelon talent like the Kings kind of have. And is he going to learn from that moving forward? So I think just he'll be a player to watch against the Sharks. But I think to travel, like not to make excuses for the Flyers, but just the schedule going into this one is a tough one. Like they play 3 games in 4 nights with Wednesday and then the back to back here, right? So that's always going to be tough. You're traveling home.
And you could see that in the third period. They look gassed.
Exactly. You're traveling home from Buffalo. You see kind of how it's affecting the legs. You're also missing, your number one goaltender, your number one center, and Sean Couturier. Like I'm sure having Couturier is going to help you against a top center heavy team like the Kings. Like if you look at the Kings center depth, right? The Flyers are kind of out of their element here in terms of how you're going to match up against this team. They have Kopitar. They have Phil Deneau. They have Pierre-Luc Dubois, where the Flyers are sporting, Scott Laughton, Noah Cates, and Morgan Frost. They can't hang with those 3 centers, in my opinion. Obviously, Couturier is going to help, but like look at a guy like Cates, right? Like you want Cates to become Phil Deneau. You know what I mean? Like that's what you're looking for out of him. So I just think the travel, the fact that the Kings are probably one of the top teams in the West, and just in terms of center depth, I think they totally outmatched the Flyers in this one, and you see it on the ice. And they outplayed the Flyers, but it's a game that you kind of, if you're Philadelphia, you need to learn from it in the sense that even though we're playing a back-to-back, even though it's a tough situation against a good team, you want to see them execute at a higher level. I just think a lot of the execution was missing out of their game in terms of missed passing, missing the net, right? I think they had a ton of missed shot opportunities in this one as well. So, LA is a really good defensive team though. And the Flyers, have been a team that have been capitalizing a lot on the rush. So I think it makes sense stylistically why LA kind of gave them fits here. Like they're kind of playing more of a trap, clog up the neutral zone style with those 3 centers. The Flyers have been a team where, they've been scoring a lot off the rush. So LA's been one of the best teams in stopping that. So it makes sense where the Flyers had trouble. What do you think, obviously, Yariv?
No, I think that was a great breakdown. Just to add a couple stats behind that too. Noah Cates was a -3 in that game. He did win almost 55% of the draws, which is pretty good. They did lose the draws pretty much everywhere else. Frost was 46.7%. Paling was 38.5%. Laughton was 25% on the draw. So obviously, you brought up the not having Couturier in the lineup. I think they were heavily mismatched down the middle without Couturier. And this is kind of what we saw last year too. Again, this is why Couturier is such a crucial part of this team, is just the trickle-down effect of missing your number one center. Travis Sanheim was a -4 that game, but he played 29 minutes of ice time. Again, hard to say that it was Sanheim's fault. I thought he actually had a pretty good game. I was surprised to see he was -4, but considering they didn't score a single goal and gave up 5, not that surprising.
And he gets the most minutes.
So. He played half the game, so it definitely makes sense. It was a game where, I think if a couple things bounced their way, again, I don't think they would have won that game the way they were playing, but maybe it couldn't have been, maybe it would have been 5-2, maybe it would have been, if the team was healthy, maybe it would have been 3-1 or something like that. But again, those all shoulda, woulda, couldas, and the reality is the Flyers didn't score on their opportunities that they did have, and LA really brought in no question. And again, you're dealing with one of the high-end teams in the league. If they would have played this way against Dallas or Vegas, it would have got out of control in those games as well. So they still have the ability to play with these teams and take it to them, but I think the travel, like you said, definitely comes into play there. And I think it was reflected all over the place. And when you can't score on the power play, I think they had 4 opportunities.
They did. They were 0 for 4.
0 for 4. They stopped 4 of 5 on the penalty kill, which is not bad. But again, if you're not scoring on the power play, Tortorella talked about it as well. It's just a completely momentum drainer. Now, I do want to talk about Cam York a little bit. I think what you said was excellent. And, no doubt about it. I've heard some of this already. Like people are already doubting York's potential or saying that they don't think he's a top pairing defender. I'm going to repeat this again, even though I've repeated endlessly. He is 22 years old. If you think that watching a kid at 22 years old is going to give you a good reflection of the defenseman's potential outside of taking away the fact that he's already in a top pairing role at 22 years old, I don't know what you're talking about. I'll say it over and over again. How many people doubted Sanheim up until this year? He looks incredible.
Yep.
I don't know what people are talking about. I think if you're continuously saying that, I'll be honest, it sounds like you don't know what you're talking about. I don't care who you are. I don't care what you write for, what podcast you have, or whatever it is. I don't know what you're talking about. And there is endless amount of examples of this. Not just York, not just Sanheim. I will say it over and over again. If you are making these statements, it's because you are either not being honest with yourself or you are not doing the research properly. And do not give me data. I am so sick of data. So much data is positioned. I was just talking about this at work today, how data can be positioned to do almost anything. You're never going to find a 22-year-old who is fully mature. It's not going to happen. Even Cale Makar is still entering his NHL potential. He is potentially a generational level talent defenseman, right? But to be a top pairing, you do not need to be generational, and your path to getting there does not need to be straight up. It almost never happens, actually. So I think there's a lot of good to take away from York this year. Doesn't bother me. He needs to be pushed. I don't know what's going to happen. Well, I know Victor Mete was called up. I don't know if they're going to bench York for a game.
No, they're not, because I actually listened to Tortorella's practice press conference that was just today.
He said,
yeah,
put him right back in.
Essentially, so yeah, he was asked, yeah, exactly, that it's going to be a clean slate. Was there any kind of hard feelings? And he said, once the game's over, we move by that, right? And that's a great mentality for the coach to have, right? Like, the player had a bad game. York likely knows himself that he had a bad game, and that he needs to improve upon certain things. And I think Tortorella is just trying to remind him of that, right? And that's kind of where the benching comes into play, saying, you're not playing well. There's certain things we can adjust and correct. I'm sure they reviewed the tape, and he's going to put him right back in there and have him work through it, because I don't think he benefits at all from sitting. I think it's better to get a young defenseman back in there, play him in the same circumstances, see if he learns from the mistakes that you saw him make in the prior game. I think that's what you need to look at it as. And I mean, he's only 22 years old. Defensemen in this league don't really hit their prime till 25, 26. So he's still far off from that. But the fact that he's already playing these minutes at such a young age is an encouraging sign.
It's also a lot.
And there's going to be struggles. And especially when it's against one of the better teams in the league, who's also a heavy team. That can wear you down on the forecheck. Like, I'm not surprised that he didn't have his best game. I think my thing for York is there's more there offensively, and we haven't seen that so far. So I think that's a part of it too. Like, I do think that the team wants to see him dictate more offensively, kind of take more chances and try to make more plays. Like, I think there is a respect to his game where he is playing a little bit safe. And I think maybe this helps motivate him to try to bring some of those elements out of his game that we do know are there. We just haven't seen it too much this season.
Is part. Sorry to cut you off. This is part of the development process, right? This is why I don't like the power play. Again, we'll go deep on the power play, but this is why I don't like the power play structures, or at least the personnel that they've been putting out there. Doesn't make a ton of sense to me. Still doesn't. I believe there are changes coming. We'll talk about that. But, I talked about this already. I think without injuries to Stahl and Risto, I think we'd be seeing Stahl and Sanheim and York and Risto, where you can allow York to be the offensive defenseman. Yeah. And right now, Sanheim's kind of all over the place. He's going up and down. He's taking all these risks. Doesn't really leave York to play that type of game when the two of them are playing together. I wouldn't be shocked if even for next game we see a change up in the pairings. Why not try maybe even Sealer? I know they're kind of low on defensemen, or Sealer, maybe rotate Sealer and Zamula into that spot with Sanheim and allow York to play with Walker, who's played pretty well. I don't know. They might just roll with what they have. I don't think they necessarily need to panic, because they've had some really good games together too. But again, I don't think that's the ideal top pairing for the Flyers. I think they put that really together because of injuries more than anything. And I think if Risto was playing, Risto would probably be playing with York like we kind of saw earlier on in preseason. And I'm looking forward to that, inevitably, when we do see Risto again. And, we'll talk about injuries in a moment here. But I think there's a lot to learn from that. And again, I don't have a big problem where this team is. You hear Torts saying it all the time. They're in a development phase. So I don't expect, Torts to have some kind of long talk with York. And I don't, even if he gets benched against his hometown team when they play Anaheim, people will blow that out of proportion.
But he'll be right back in next game, most likely.
Yeah. And like, okay, the players on the team get a little upset about, who cares? Sorry, if I'm the coach, I could literally care less. I mean that honestly.
It's being done for a reason, right? Like, there's a reason.
You won't forget it that way, will you?
Yeah, exactly. But there's a reason why Tortorella operated in this way, right? And you take ice time away from a player, it gets their attention really quick, right? Players want to play. I'm sure, like I said, they went over the mistakes, and now you see how he bounces back. I think that's what's more telling, not the benching, but how does he play now after it occurred?
Yeah.
And do we see him have a big game, right? I think he's trying to motivate, right? Like, that's what Tortorella is trying to do here. And I think, why not push the button here and kind of see how it works for York in this situation.
And let him work through it. I mean, again, I talk about this all the time with Tortorella. He has like a doghouse, but it's super temporary.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, there's a little bit there of a bias with Frost. I see it as much as anybody else. And, I've heard some stuff behind the scenes, or as much as anyone else, and I've heard some stuff behind the scenes as well. But like at the same time, he's also playing Frost when it's like, he doesn't completely hold it against guys. And go, oh, you have no chance to win me back over. I think he was like that probably earlier in his career, but he's talked about that. The fact that he's tried to move past that he's learned from guys like Hartnell and Atkinson and other players that he had, that he can get out of that. You know what I mean? That players can get out of that, and that players are never too late to evolve.
Look at Frost, right? Like, we'll get into Sandheim's a great example of that. Like, last season, one of his worst seasons, comes in and
in his hometown.
Yeah, he's being played 29 minutes a night like a top pair defenseman. So it just shows you can work through that. And I think that's a great point, just with Frost. Like, he's playing him right now. And I mean, they did change some of the lines of practice today, and we'll get into those. But one to look at specifically is Frost gets placed with Owen Tippett and Travis Konechny. Those are arguably the two best offensive players on the team. So if you don't think that Frost is getting an opportunity, I mean, he's getting put between probably the best two wingers on the team here upcoming in the next game. So I'll just list the lines out since we kind of got into it a little bit here. But the lines today at practice in San Jose were Cam Atkinson, Scott Lawton, Tyson Forster, Joel Farabee, Noah Cates, Bobby Brink, Travis Konechny, Morgan Frost, Owen Tippett, Nick Delorier, Ryan Poehling, Garnet Hathaway. Another good piece of news is Sean Couturier and Carter Hart are also at practice, and we're out there for the full practice. So that's great to hear from the Flyers perspective. But yeah, I mean, new lines, it's not really too much of a surprise, just considering the last game. Sometimes you got to shake it up. It's a long season. So we said that before, right? They're not going to stay constant throughout the season here. So
yeah. So, well, let's move into injuries. So you just announced it that, we did get some good news, right, as the Flyers kind of head into their West Coast trip here, their annual West Coast trip, right? They just played LA, but now they're going over to the other side of the country. We did have some good news. I guess shout out to Charlie O'Connor, who I believe is the one who broke this online. But Sean Couturier and Carter Hart are traveling with the team and were spotted on the ice already. I don't know if that means they're going to be playing against San Jose in their next opponent. But it is obviously a great sign that neither one of them, are injured long term. And I do want to comment, I'm not here to bash any journalists at all, because I think they're just trying to do their job and they're just trying to report. But you see early things like 2 to 3 weeks, 4 to 6 weeks, 3 to 6 weeks. And then Carter Hart is now always was listed day to day, by the way.
He's back on the ice.
And he's already back on the ice. So it's just like, again, I don't think anybody needs to be chastised or anything like that for this, but it's again, one of those things, like, we were talking about it off camera, we were talking about it through text, we heard these dates and we're like, I don't buy that, and again, I don't do that for everything I hear, but you look at the injury, the way it happened, it just didn't seem like
Well,
it didn't seem like again, it could be wrong, but I didn't look at it and go, oh yeah, this guy's done for a month and a half or
well,
whatever.
my thought process is if it was such a serious injury at first, he wouldn't have tried to play through it. And he tried to play through it, probably tweaks it a little more. And
Yeah.
he's like, you know what? I should probably come out now. And that's kind of
And we said it was precautionary. Remember that?
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. It kind of hints to me that that's the, it's not the most serious thing. Obviously, it's a great sign to see them both come out for practice, participate in the full practice. I don't know if they're going to get in Tuesday, like tomorrow or today when everybody's listening to this against San Jose here. I think my prognostication is they probably give Couturier and Hart the day off again against San Jose and then bring them back for the weekend on the back-to-backs. I think that makes a lot of sense to get like 3, 4 extra days kind of off here, but we'll see, right? Like, I mean, if Sean Couturier feels good and he thinks he can play, I'm sure John Tortorella is going to want to use him and he's going to want him in the lineup.
Yeah.
But Urson, it was confirmed that Urson will get the start
And that makes sense.
for San Jose.
San Jose, yeah.
So I would expect Carter Hart probably on the weekend, maybe even Couturier, but I could see Couturier potentially get back in.
Yeah, I think you're spot on there, and I wouldn't even be surprised if they go Ersan, and I think it's back-to-back games. I think against Anaheim and LA.
Exactly.
So I wouldn't be surprised if it's Ersan, and then Hart if they do
on the Saturday.
Yeah, exactly. Like give him that extra day. Maybe it won't be. It's possible, but it does show he's on the precipice of coming back, or at least close to coming back, and that it's not a month and a half long.
It does just show. It does just show too. Like, sometimes we don't always have to jump the gun. I mean, I know it's great to be the first to report and all that, but right. It's the internet age where everybody wants to be first, but sometimes I think we just need to let things play out. You could state Carter Hart as an injury, but until the team actually releases a timeline that's definitive, none of us really know, right?
Yeah. So. And my question is, when I see it come out so quickly, I'm like, you're telling me you already had doctors evaluate this, that you already got the MRIs, that he already so quickly that maybe they did hear it from the team itself, but it obviously wasn't something they wanted to release publicly because they don't know if the diagnosis at that point is 100% accurate. Now, when it was reported by Anthony Sanfilippo, he did even kind of say, look, this is what the Flyers are hoping, that it's 2 to 3 weeks and not 4 to 6 weeks. But I think he was more trying to say, like, oh, they're hoping it's more short. Well, I think he was hoping, like, they hope it's more short term than long term. And sometimes things change quickly. But again, it's one of those things where with injuries, you really just want to give it time. Unless the guy's hopping right back into the game or whatever, or right back in the next game. You need to give it a little bit of time to see what they're injured, because a lot has to do with inflammation and how the body recovers, and not everybody's body treats injuries exactly the same. That's why you see players who get injured repeatedly, and then players who have Iron Man streaks, right? Like everybody's body's a little bit different, so you just want to give it a little bit of time. But it is good news regardless. Especially Cal Peterson did get the call up, and we know that that Felix Sandstrom was sent back down for a conditioning stint, and then now he has an injury. The exact same thing happened to him that happened to Mule Andre. And I will say this, dude, and I talked about this last year, and it always feels to me like those are the hockey gods punishing you for not making the right call to begin with. That, like, the guy shouldn't have been just sitting there with the Flyers. Andre shouldn't have been on the team to start the year with the Flyers. And it's like almost like, hockey karma, where it's like, yeah, of course they get injured now that they're in the lineup. But it's like, and again, this is all woulda, shoulda, coulda. I mean, a little bit talking out of my ass here, but I feel like this happens just so often where, and I'll use the Keith Yandel thing, right? Like, for those who don't remember, Keith Yandel had, that Iron Man streak going, played in every game, and then they finally sat him down and played Nick Seeler, and then Nick Seeler got hurt that game. And it was like, and Nick Seeler doesn't get hurt, right? Like, you look at Seeler, he's a machine. And it's like, of course he got hurt. And then they had to put Yandel right back in the next game.
Should have just kept the streak
for absolutely no reason. Because at the point that they actually took him out of the lineup, there was no reason. They were out of the playoffs. So there was no reason to sit him at that point. The time to sit him would have been way before that, when he was minus 30. I think he finished that season minus 39 or 37 or something like that. A
substantial number for sure.
Yeah. So he should have never been in that situation to begin with, going that long. So it's like, when you're not doing the right things, I feel like life just has a way of kind of turning the knife on you a little bit. So it's more bad luck than anything. But bad luck is when opportunity meets preparation, and the preparation wasn't there. with both of them. Again, Andre now not playing for the Phantoms and Sandstrom now not playing for the Phantoms as well. I'm sure they'll both be back. I doubt that either one of them are long term, but I don't know. It's just annoying. And then just an update. Still no news on Ristolainen. I don't know if he's traveling with the team. Did you see anything about that? I
No,
don't
I
think
don't believe so.
yeah, so again, that probably is a groin thing, is my guess. That's why it's taking so much longer. Really unfortunate because we haven't even seen this team with him yet. Mark Stahl, on the other hand, he should be somewhere between that 2 to 4 week range now to his return. Hopefully closer to the 2 week range because we could definitely use him back. And that's a guy, like I was saying earlier,
Just the physicality, I think.
well, that's a guy I could see Sanheim playing with. A guy who can. He's not going to make a lot of mistakes. He's not a burner in any kind of way, especially at this point in his career. But he's not really going to make mistakes. The big body, he could play with Sanheim and let Sanheim do his thing. You know.
Yeah, his role's defined, right? Like he's going to be your stay-at-home guy. Whereas you have Sanheim and York, and I think they play well off of each other just in terms of the hockey sense, being able to pass the puck to one another and a lot of that. But you do limit each of their games because someone is always going to have to be more of the stay-at-home guy. You can't have both of them taking chances like that and kind of rushing up the ice, right? So it does give York the opportunity to maybe add more offensive aspects to his game if he does kind of move away from Sanheim. So I agree with that 100%. I did also want to mention a stat here. It's a little bit random, but it kind of just goes to the effect of Tortorella's presser earlier today. After the practice, he kind of said, like, out of 10 out of 12 games, he said, the Ottawa game and the LA game are the ones you kind of throw away here. But he has thought that the team's played really well process-wise, and they're playing just how, they're looking for in terms of the coaching staff. And I think that one stat that really shows that for the Flyers is their goal differential above expected right now is negative 13.9, putting them at 29th in the league. So for anybody that is unaware, like goals above or expected goal percentage essentially is the chance of an unblocked shot attempt being a goal. So for example, a rebound shot in the slot, it could have 50% chance of going in and be worth 0.5 expected goals, while a shot from the blue line, might be 0.01. Like it depends on the high danger chances and things like that. But for them to be negative 13.9 just means that with the chances they're creating, they should be scoring a lot more. They're just not getting a lot of bounces, right? So they're playing really well, and we're seeing this. They're out shooting teams in certain situations, like that Buffalo game, like that Carolina game, with having tons of chances, and they're just not, going in. And Tortorella, you mentioned something really interesting as well during that press conference, that he said the team has really changed up stylistically in terms of what they were looking to do last season versus this season. Last season, they were more focused on play away from the puck, playing a defensive game. And this season, they want to learn how to score and kind of create offense. And you are seeing that just with the way they're playing, right? They're creating a lot more scoring opportunities. They're not going in based off the stats like we see in negative 13.9 goal differential. But that's a lot of it can be attributed to luck. Like if you keep playing in the same way, you're going to end up scoring a lot more. I think also the power play factors into that too, just not being able to score there as much as they should be. But I do think the team's playing well stylistically. They are playing more up tempo, more offensive, and it's definitely good to see because you do want to see a team take the next step versus what they were doing last season. Like you see a lot of young guys kind of learning to play off the puck, but now kind of let them loose and show what they can do offensively. And I think in a sense that's kind of what is happening here. And you can tell, right? Like their controlled entry rate this season is 51.19%. So that means that they're controlling the puck almost 10% more than they were last season when they're entering the offensive zone, because their controlled entry rate for 60, I think full season last season was 42%. So they're controlling the puck and entering the zone almost 10% more. So that just shows like stylistically, they are looking to play more offensively. It just hasn't gone in for them in a lot of situations, but I think it's a positive thing just looking at the process. What do you think about that, Yuri?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think there definitely is a stylistic. I mean, they look to be a much more aggressive team this year all around. I mean, if you look at the games that they're on, they're not winning games the same way they won last year. Like they're winning games dominantly, scoring a lot of goals. Even in the games, like even the game against the Kings, it's not like they had no offensive opportunities. They didn't bury any of them, but there are some that maybe could have gone, a little bit the opposite way. Even the game that they lost against the Buffalo Sabres, they were all over them. Like we didn't win games like that last year.
Yeah.
This team is a score by committee team. and way beyond what last season was. When they are completely healthy, I believe they can be annoying to every team in the NHL. We have seen that earlier in this part of year. They're not going to finish at the top of the league, but they have the ability to compete at all levels. And even with Scott Laughton's on the fourth line, again, we saw what Laughton was doing on the fourth line. Like, this team has the ability of attacking and attacking and attacking and attacking. And even without the level of talent, especially on the back end, that hasn't been an issue. Like, nobody's talking about the fact that the Flyers offense is rolling or was rolling at times this year, but you don't look at their defensemen and go, oh, look at all these phenomenal puck moving defensemen. They are just attacking as a team. And I think stylistically, it definitely shows that there's something different here.
I think it's a positive for sure, right? Like,
and with the power play being so bad too, and that not being even as noticeable.
Yeah, but I think you're seeing them just take, like, with this kind of change in stylistic play, it's almost like another step forward in this, rebuild, in the sense where, okay, the team and the coaching staff believes that, okay, we taught a lot of these young players the defense first last season. That's what we're really trying to entrench into their games. And now we're going to kind of let them loose offensively and see what they can do, and see if they could be a team that does control possession more and doesn't defend as often. I think we've definitely seen that. Like, they're just not defending as often as they were last season, and when you are defending as much as they were last season, you're going to lose a majority of the games. Where I think this season they haven't been defending as much, and I do think that is going to result in more wins down the line here. I just think the record doesn't show actually how well they've played to this point. I think there's been some games where they probably should have won that they didn't. So
totally. And their transitional play has been better out from their own zone and just creating offense, from a turnover or anything like that.
Yeah.
The thing that I think they're still not doing enough of is shooting enough, but that's more of a power play issue. We'll talk about that in a minute. Do want to talk a little bit about the Sharks, the next upcoming game, things that people should be aware of. The Sharks were coming into a long losing streak against the Flyers last season, and the Flyers lost 3-0 to them. That was a game that Travis Konechny and Kevin Hayes were benched in. Not a great experience, and I think JVR got injured in that one as well.
Yeah.
And, just from that angle, it's like, it seems like history repeating a little bit, but I think it's more of rhyming. History rhymes, it doesn't repeat. So it seems like it's the same thing, but it almost never is. The good thing in this case, the Flyers are coming off a 5-0 loss. They should be extra motivated to get out there. And in this case, like, the San Jose Sharks have given up, lost 10-1 and then 10-2.
20 goals against.
20 goals in 2 games. And that hasn't happened since 1965, the Boston Bruins. So this is not a good team. I did see that Mike Greer did call them out, and I had he had a one-on-one. Oh, great. I just lost it.
He had a players only meeting, I believe.
Yeah, players only. And it was a one-way meeting where he was kind of just, kind of letting him have it. And he said he was seeing stuff that, he knows can be controlled, essentially, and that he sees them doing, like, kind of cutting corners and whatnot. But, at the end of the day, like, again, I don't see the Flyers being the same team they were last year. I don't think the Sharks losing these games, I don't think it's going to matter to the Flyers at all. I think they're going to approach this team the same way they've approached the other games. And the Sharks are desperate to get out of their hole. The Flyers have also lost of late, so they're also going to come in hungry. And, I'm not saying the Flyers are going to beat them and score 10 goals, but I do think this is an absolutely winnable game for the Flyers. I'm not expecting like another 3-0 loss to the Sharks. The Sharks have their injuries as well. They're missing Logan Couture, their best player, but they're not a team, like, even they're good players that are in the lineup. None of them are that great defensively. Again, they have William Eklund in their top 6. He's a relatively young player. They're not looking good on it. This is probably the worst team we've seen in a few years. They're worse than the Anaheim Ducks of last year. Again, all of this is fixable for the Sharks. I don't think that they're a team that's going to continuously give up 10 goals all year round, and they probably will put a better effort against the Flyers, but I don't expect this to be a repeat of last year.
Yeah, I mean, I do expect the Sharks to be very motivated and trying to kind of change their fate as of the last 2 games. But you have to look at it from a Flyers perspective. They just lost 5-0. And they also, out of the last 4 here, have lost 3. So, I mean, they're going to want to try to get back into the winning column. So I don't think really they're going to be as focused on the Sharks, more just focused about their game, what they need to correct from their LA game. And I think that probably benefits them in this situation. And I mean, I think too, Tortorella and his staff will probably point out like this isn't a team we can take lightly, despite the fact they've lost 10-1
We're
back
not
to
in a
back
position to
here.
do that.
Yeah, exactly, right? Like the Flyers, it's true. They do need to work hard and put the effort in, outwork teams if they want to be successful. I think they realize that. I also think that they know that San Jose is going to have a chip on their shoulder because losing, 10-1 back to back usually does that for a team. So they'll probably expect at home San Jose to come out the first 10 minutes really hard. The Flyers will have to be ready for that. But, I expect it to be a game for the Flyers where they try to kind of take advantage of what's been a positive for them so far this season. And that's, being able to play really quick in transition, score off the rush, and, kind of use their forecheck to establish a lot of their chances in their pace of play. So I think that's keys to success for the Flyers. That's what's made them successful in past games this season. So that's something they're likely going to try to replicate here against San Jose. I am interested to kind of see what happens with the power play in this one, if there's any changes. I know Tortorella was mentioning that, Rocky Thompson was working on the power play really hard, actually, apparently. And, he
I
wasn't.
love the way you said that.
Yeah, but he apparently, but I mean, he isn't supposed to be changing the scheme, or supposedly is not changing any of the schemes that they're working on, but more the personnel. And we kind of talked about that, where it might not be what they're trying to do because every team's kind of running an umbrella or looking to make, east-west passes on a power play from behind the net to the front of the net. It's more just the execution and how, your power play is actually set up. So I am interested to just see what the changes are on the power play. And I think it's a perfect segue to kind of get into that, Yariv.
Yeah, absolutely. Totally. Now, that obviously was our next segment. So the Flyers right now are ranked 30th in the league in the power play, a territory that they have become quite accustomed to over the past few years. The Blues have a 3.7% power play at the bottom of the league, and then the Caps are right below the Flyers at 31. They're, I think, less than a percentage point behind them as well. And again, it goes to that whole, you need to have high-end talent. I don't agree with that at all. I don't also think the problem is predictability. I've been saying this for a few years. All power plays are predictable. One, they have footage on you, so they know what you're doing and they know what systems you're running. It's about execution and executing it quickly. And Tortorella said it himself. They're not shooting enough on the power play. Too much passing, too much waiting for a perfect opportunity. They should just be gunning. And we've been talking about this. You mentioned it already. I did not like the combinations for the power play. They have not panned out at all. I don't even know where they came from. And then the whole idea of when Sean Couturier is out, let's just put Frost in front of the net. I'm like, what? I don't get that at all. He's undersized. He's not that small, but he's not a big body in front of the net.
Not a net front presence.
That's not his strength as a player. So again, I don't think Rocky Thompson's a bad coach. I'm not here to rip on him, but I do not understand the logic that he was putting out there for now. I expect things to change. And from what I understand, this is something I had written in the show notes before Tortorella even said anything about it. But Tyson Forrester, of all people, who has a big shot and all that, if you want to look at anybody who could potentially be in front of the net, it's the guy who plays like John LeClair, who also played in front of the net. So from what I understand, Tyson Forrester probably will be net front presence for this upcoming game. That one makes a lot more sense to me. Yes, he has a big shot. I understand why you would want it. But again, he's struggling to score right now. Let him get around the net. He's big. He's strong. He probably has the ability to tip the puck. He's going to have a lot better time or a lot easier job kind of fighting defensemen at the front of the net than Morgan Frost will. But again, I'm just really looking forward to these changing. The power play does not need to be a tricky power play. It needs to execute quickly. That means players need to know their roles. The guys who shoot need to know that when that puck comes to me, I am shooting it. Just like I talk about all the time. Everybody knows what Ovechkin is going to do. He still scored 50, 60 goals a year doing the exact goddamn same thing every single game. You need to get that puck over at a very fast pace and get the shot on net. Everything is about getting the shot on net on the power play and outnumbering your opponents. And they are not doing that. They are focused way too much on waiting for a perfect seam or a perfect something. I don't really know. for one, the in zone entries haven't been amazing, but even when they have gotten it and they've been able to kind of circulate the puck, I feel like nobody wants to shoot outside of Travis Sanheim, who I think again is playing at a very high level still. But I think we need more ownership on the power play. I'm the guy. I'm gonna move it. And again, I would not be using, Cam Atkinson as the play driver on the power play. I'd be using him as the bumper position, right? Like in the slot. Like I just feel like guys are slotted in the wrong areas with the wrong mixes, but I'm hoping we see a very different combination now.
Yeah, obviously the power play, I mean, it hasn't been good to start. I mean, it has not been good for a long time for the Flyers. So you do want to see improvement over some years. I think like this team, especially you're adding a Couturier, you're adding an Atkinson, you have another year of, Tippett and Frost and Farabee getting older. They shouldn't be as bad as they are, right? And just in terms of the personnel that they have, they just haven't been able to execute. I have a really fun stat here. Well, it's not really a fun stat. It's kind of a terrible stat in terms of a Flyers perspective.
Yeah,
But shout out to Alex Appleyard for the stat, but it just shows and puts into perspective how bad the Flyers power play has been. And I don't expect it to continue to be this bad just with the personnel that they have. So since the start of 21-22, in 176 games sampled, the Flyers are 13.7% of the power play. So that's 32nd in the league, which is last. 69 power play goals, 32nd in the NHL, which is last. And plus 48 on the power play, which is 32nd in the league, which is last. So they haven't been good at all, but there's a chance for them to improve here. And I think what it really starts with is just not being so perimeter focused. I actually like their zone entries coming in. So far, like into the season, I think they've been entering the zone a lot cleaner and actually getting the puck set up. But just when it is set up, they're not executing plays that are going to actually like create scoring chances, create goals. They're really just passing it around the perimeter. Somebody's taking a shot that's either getting blocked or it's like a low percentage shot where there's not even a screen, gets deflected. Like they just need to do a better job of getting the puck more into the middle of the ice, middle of the slot for those shots. Also utilizing their one-timers. Like you're seeing, Tyson Forster getting used off his opposite wall where he's not able to utilize his one-timer effectively. Same with Owen Tippett. They haven't really been utilizing two of their biggest shots for one-time opportunities. That's what usually you're going to find the most success doing on the power play. So I'd like to see them utilize both their shots more. Even Frost, right? Like Frost should be your guy in the Voracek spot, essentially, like on the right hand wall there, so he can kind of use his one timer and run the power play. I think what's happening, or maybe even Sean Couturier when he comes back, but there isn't a player that you can single on this team like who's running this power play unit right now, right? Like who's the quarterback? If you look at it, there isn't one. And I think you mentioned that as well, right? Like there's not anybody taking control or kind of dictating the play, dictating kind of what the team's doing. This power play should be running through me type of player. It's just not happening, and hopefully you want to see something like that kind of start to emerge. Like personally, I think what they should do if they can't figure it out is put Couturier on that left half wall, have him run the power plays, the most experienced veteran. He's been on successful power plays in the past with Wayne Simmons.
He also was running the half wall when he was playing with Giroux.
Yeah, exactly. So it's just strange to me that they don't have him in that role. Like maybe they're trying to ease him in there. He did score, I mean, a couple power play goals as the net front guy, so he's not bad in that position. But I think just with the way you have it set up currently, you're not utilizing him to the best potential in terms of maximizing what you can output on your power play, right? So like either have it run through him, have it run through Frost, or alternatively, this is what I would actually want to see just because I'm interested to see how it would look. But you have York on your second power play. You have Sanheim on the first. Put them both together, run your power play with two defensemen, and see what they can do. I mean, like, I think that would be interesting for me just because you have two guys from the top and then you can kind of utilize your shots down low.
Or maybe use York all the way at the top of the umbrella and allow Sanheim to be the shot off the half.
Or be more of a rover because he's kind of shown that he's good at that. So
and he's got a really heavy shot this year. He's much stronger than he was in the past. I think we said at one point he had the second hardest shot in the
hardest shot in the league,
or the hardest shot up into that point in the season. So the guy can shoot. I just think they need to really adjust the players they're on. I think they should be open to that. I don't know if they feel comfortable with Sean Walker running a power play is the only thing. Yeah. Or maybe they would go with Zamula, but he's kind of prone for mistakes right now because he's still a rookie. And I love how we let Zamula go with mistakes and go, oh, he's a young defenseman. And then Cam York is a year younger
Yeah,
and playing significantly more minutes. And then everybody's
against harder
jumping on his
competition
mistake. It's
too.
like, okay. Again, their age matters, not just, their amount of playing time in the NHL, like their maturity level, where their game is at. Again, Cam York is way ahead of every other young defenseman in this system. That definitely matters. That doesn't
Yeah,
make him a potential top
but
four guy. That makes him a potential top pairing guy. And if you look at a guy like Sanheim and where he was at 22 years old, he was struggling more than York is struggling at this point in his career.
yeah, but just to finish off on the power play, I think it's just,
Yeah.
it's not working with what they're doing right now. They're obviously trying to be a little too fancy, too cute with what they're doing on the perimeter. Just get simple with it, right? Like they don't have, those elite talent players where you're looking for that perfect seam pass all the time. But what they do have is they have, some really good shooters and Konechny, Tippett, Forster, and Atkinson. So utilize that, right? Like you don't see an open passing lane. Well, get the puck to the net and hope for a rebound, right? Like
Yeah.
it's that's a better thing than passing it around just for you to end up losing it and having the puck go down the ice and you're kind of taking away from your own momentum. Whereas you get some shots on net, it might not go in, but at least you're pressuring the goalie. You're making the goalie work to make a save. Whereas you just passing it around isn't making the goalie work to make a save. And that's a factor in a game too, right? Like, a goalie has to put effort into going down into his butterfly, making a save on a shot and trying to control a rebound. Whereas if he's just, shifting stances because of the passing, it's not really putting him to work. So I think there's just a lot of different ways they can approach it. And I think we definitely, I mean, for them, right, if they're going to start kind of capitalizing on some of their scoring chances and just playing better offensively, the power play is going to have to be a key to them winning more games here for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Well said. All right. I just want to remind everybody, please like and subscribe. Hit the notification bell for more notifications on this podcast, and also follow us on iTunes and Spotify and give us a ratings on iTunes. I saw another rating come in. So thank you all so much. And yeah, keep supporting us that way. It'd be a humongous help. All right, let's get into our Phantoms update. Then we'll do our prospect update, and then we'll end it on that. So, just a quick update on the Phantoms. They did have a win and a loss in their previous weekend, so a lot better than their kind of abysmal double loss the other weekend, where they had 1 goal in 2 games and gave up 8 goals. Their first game was against Hartford. Felix Sandstrom played 1 period in that game, gave up 1 goal on 7 shots, and then was pulled for Gahagan, who went in net. But the Phantoms did go on. They were outshot in the game, but they did go on to win 5-4. Some notable statistics in that one. Uli Lichel scored again. He has 8 goals in 10 games, I think, right now. So he's been a scoring machine in the AHL level. Elliot Denoyer got his second one of the year in that game. And then Samu Tuomala scored the game winner in overtime and also had 2 assists in that game. Elliot Denoyer also an assist on that goal. So Denoyer with 2 points. J.R. Avon had his second pro goal also, but Tuomala with a 3-point game. And then the next game was against the Springfield Thunder. They lost that game 3-2 in overtime. Again, outshot in that game. Another assist for Denoyer, and then another assist for Tuomala in that game. And Tuomala, for a rookie right now, I did have his stats up. Oh, of course, is a wrong season. So I believe he has 2 goals, 6 assists, 8 points in 10 games. That puts him tied for lead on the team in points. He's also got a +2 rating. His game is definitely coming around. I'm really interested to see where he ends up this season. Whether he gets a call at some point, if there be an injury. I feel like him or Denoyer or Lichel are probably the leading candidates there for a call up. But I think Tuomala really, what a turnaround. I mean, from the showing we saw in preseason to the point production he's putting up now, it shows that his production in Mestis was not, is not a fallacy and a true indication that this guy's really come around. And now he looks like a 2nd-round pick type of player with an NHL future. And it's really nice to see.
Yeah, for Tuomala, I mean, I think obviously with a young player and they have struggles, you can't always say that's going to define them. There's always an opportunity for them to turn things around. This is kind of what's happening here.
Mm-hmm.
And I think one of the main things for him has always been his skating, right? Like, you're such a good skater. I always thought that when you have that aspect to your game, especially in the modern day, like way kind of hockey's played in terms of just, speed through the neutral zone, speed in transition. That's really what's going to create your scoring chances. He could be a useful asset. And I think obviously the Flyers, they did a really good job kind of having Sami Kapanen kind of be his mentor almost last season when he was still in Finland. I think that really was a big factor for him being able to turn things around, because it showed that the Flyers really did care about his development and really cared about where he was at the progression of his career.
Absolutely.
I think that's paid dividends. And I think just the attention to detail from this management staff, like you see them just more involved, more hands-on with things like that, and it's paying off. And I think, having Kapanen kind of do that for Tuomala, probably maybe a guy that Tuomala likely looked up to, probably growing up, because just think about, Sami Kapanen is an icon in the Finnish game of hockey. So to have somebody at that level kind of interested in your game, what does that do for your confidence as a player? And hockey is really a confidence-based game. Like, you can tell Tuomala right now just has a ton of confidence, and it's just great to see a young guy kind of turn it around from a point where, it wasn't looking like things were going upwards for him. But obviously he has found his game, and he's showing it, leading the Phantoms in scoring right now. But I would agree, Yariv, like if he continues this type of play, and just with the way Tortorella was talking about him in training camp, and like how he kept him around a lot longer, had him in a power play spot, it would not surprise me if a certain player was to go down, that he could be, a call up, just depending on where it is in the lineup. Because obviously, as we say, it's always situational based on who it is that gets hurt. But I could definitely see him being an option for sure.
And just to add on to that, Elliot Denoye does have 7 points in 10 games. So he started off pretty slow, but has now kind of been ramping up his production as well.
Yeah.
I think another one of those cases where it was like more disappointment kind of got to him. I do think, Wade Allison has 2 assists in 9 games, so improving a little bit, but still a shocker. That guy
he should be a point a game in the AHL.
At least where Tanner Lazinski, who I think is also hurt because he hasn't played the last 2 games either, which is interesting. I don't remember hearing that he was hurt, but still unfortunate. All right, let's get into our prospect updates, though. I'd say we probably keep it pretty generally high level here. The 2 that we focus on every week, we're going to continue to focus on them because they're huge stories. And quite frankly, if you're going to talk about anybody on this team or in this program, I mean, these are the 2 biggest game changers for the organization. At least that can be identified right now. We know that Oliver Bonk is probably going to be a big part of this team when he gets over here, probably Denver Barkey as well, especially because he's still doing well. But let's start with Cutter Gauthier. He had a goal and an assist the other night. By the way, his team has only lost 1 game, 3-4 to Denver.
They're a powerhouse.
They have won every other game, so obviously his team is much better. He now has 8 goals and 2 assists in 8 games. The guy's over a point a game at the NCAA level at 19, going on 20. This is excellent. Obviously on a better team this year, but you can see the type of goals that he's scoring. He's scoring every game. He is. I'd like to see him get a little more assists, but I don't know if it more of a consequence of him just being the goal scoring guy. And, more of like just the go-to guy on a power play, right? Something that the Flyers kind of need, kind of what we talked about. Like, he wouldn't hesitate to shoot every time.
Exactly.
So this is something the Flyers really need. So it's really exciting to see what Cutter Gauthier is doing. I'm not surprised at all. I said this to Jamie Baskow in private, but I think I might have said on the podcast too, but I believe just like Travis Konechny, he will never play a game in the AHL, at least not in his actual rookie year. I can't see him making the team out of camp. His offensive game is just too high. Potential 40 goal scorer in the NHL. I think maybe even he can go above that depending on who he's playing with. Like if he's on a line with Michkov, that could be incredibly dangerous in the NHL. But a guy that's, has it all and has probably one of the best shots we've seen from a Flyers prospect outside of Michkov that I've seen. Just incredibly deceptive, powerful, and he has everything else. We haven't seen anything like this really since like Gagne or Carter, guys who really are pure shooters at a higher level even than Owen Tippett and Tyson Forrester or Atkinson, TK.
My thing with Gauthier is just look at all his goals in the NCAA, and he's beating these goalies from distance. Like, it's not like he's right in close. He's ripping it by these guys. Like, the game or the the last game he played where he scored, I just watched the replay of the goal that he scored, and you see the whip on his stick. It's just insane, like the whiplash and the amount of power behind that release, and he's really only putting a flick behind it. So he has one of the probably best releases in terms of NHL prospects. I would say he's probably a top 15 release in the NHL if you even put in the NHL. I just haven't seen a guy that it is Austin Matthews like the way that he releases the puck off of his stick. It's a big comparison to make, but like if you look how both of them shoot it, it's very stylistically similar, just in terms of like changing the angles up, the quick release, the way the whiplash is on the stick. So I mean, when you see something like that, it's just obviously encouraging. I mean, he has a goal a game, so you just can't ask for more. I fully expect him to be in the Hobey Baker conversation as the best player in the NCAA this season. I do expect his team to probably, make a dent in the Frozen Four and probably be one of those Final Four too. Like they add some depth. Like you said, they only lost one game so far. When you add that whole USNTDP line of Will Smith, Gabe Perreault, and Ryan Leonard on top of Gauthier, I mean, it's no surprise to me that the team is kind of just performing really well right now.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's really well said, and really exciting to see because he's been everything we were hoping he would be.
Yeah.
And remember, we're going to see him probably at the end of this year. Clearly, his team is going to go the distance, so he might not ever play any pro hockey for us this year unless for some reason their season ends early. But if he does make it over here, you're going to see a taste. And remember, he already played against men and was almost a goal a game, playing for Team USA. Yeah, in the World Championship. So this is just a really exciting player for this organization. And, for all those people who think we're still 3-4 years, okay, well, what happens when Cutter Gauthier comes over here? You see how difficult it was to get Morgan Frost in the lineup. Now, imagine all these guys are still here, plus Cutter Gauthier. You got to move some bodies. So that means trading is going to happen. Players are going to be swapped out. That's your opportunity to maybe go out and get a defenseman. Flyers still have an opportunity to be aggressive to go get Michkov. I know everybody thinks it's an impossibility or whatever. But we'll see where the Flyers are. There was no reason to even be aggressive to bring him over, especially in a year like this. Like getting Michkov here this year wouldn't make us that much better. It wouldn't be worth it. It's better to allow both of these guys to develop. And I think the Flyers made the right decision by letting Cutter Gauthier now go, have a really successful NCAA season, let him get that in where he didn't really have that last year, let him get it out of his system. Look at the fact that look at Bobby Brink, who I think it's still the case, but he was leading all rookies in scoring, which we didn't even talk about. He did that because he's 22. He's not 18 like Connor Bedard. It doesn't mean he's going to be better than Connor Bedard, but again, he's further in his development because
more mature physically.
Yes, of all. Age really, really matters. And I'm just super excited about Gauthier. All right, let's talk about the big banger, and that is Matvei Michkov. If you're following him in Elite Prospect, I realized the other day that for some reason his statistics are not getting updated because I saw he scored a goal and then I didn't see it updated on Elite Prospect. So on Elite Prospects, it's missing a couple games. So I got it from the KHL site. You can go to Quant Hockey, which is an amazing resource as well.
HockeyDB too.
HockeyDB does not have his.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they've never been good with KHL statistics, and I think now it's even worse. So for everything else, yes, HockeyDB is amazing. I use it very regularly, but for some reason KHL they just don't pull in their database. But right now, Matvei Michkov has 9 goals, 9 assists for 18 points in 19 games. He is a -3 on the year. His shooting percentage is 10.8, which is pretty good. Not like out of this world, but probably pretty consistent.
Yeah.
With where it will be. And I'll tell you right now, he is 15th in the KHL in points per game with a 0.999. I'm sorry, 0.900. So just under a point per game. He did have the flu. For those who are not aware, so it slowed down his production. Now he's over the flu, and then he had a goal and assist game the other day. If you look at this top 15, the only player that is even close to Michkov's age is Vasili Atanasov, who is 21 years old. He's slightly ahead of him at 0.963, but if you look at his same production at Michkov's age, he wasn't in the
Yeah,
KHL. He was in the MHL. So if you
just
look at
shows
what Michkov is doing, he is still on an astronomic pace.
for his age. Yeah,
Vasili's brought up his statistics several times. Doing half a point a game in the KHL at his age would mean he's probably a star player. He's doing double that. So, you look at all those names we mentioned before, the Malkins, the Kucherovs, the Datsuks, the Kaprizovs, all these guys, the Panarins, he is outpacing all of them. And he is turning out to be every bit of the prospect we were hoping he would be. And hopefully by the time he comes over here, again, he's not going to be an 18-year-old. I suspect he's going to come in here and be one of the best point producers in the NHL. And I look at his game, I do not think it's one that needs to adapt to a smaller rink. I think he will actually benefit from a smaller rink because he's not a sheer burner that he won't need as much time to kind of skate away. That won't be a big part of his game, just like getting on breakaways. He's good in the corners. He's good along the boards. He's quick. He's deceptive. He's got the best shot of any prospect, in my opinion, including Cutter Gauthier, everyone but Connor Bedard. So, again, Matvei Michkov is in no way letting us down. And in fact, probably even raising his expectations from where we thought he would be at this point.
Yeah, Michkov, I mean, you can't really ask for more out of a prospect playing in a men's league, essentially almost a point a game. And like you said, there's nobody even really close to his age that are above him in the scoring in the KHL right now. The closest is 21 years old. So it just shows, how difficult it is to score in that league as a young player. And it's funny because when you do watch Michkov, I've seen, a handful of KHL games that he's played. And even though he is younger in age, like he does not look outmatched on the board battles. He doesn't look outmatched going in the areas of the ice that typically are harder to get to for a younger player. Like at the front of the net, he scored a lot of goals from the front of the net where you're kind of battling for position. He wins a lot of his board battles. So it does kind of show, like, even though he is still a young player, there is a physical maturity to his game. And I think as he gets older, we'll only see more of that kind of creep in. And then just for anybody who saw the goal that he scored in the last game that he played, like, holy shit. I mean, can this kid shoot the puck? Like, he literally takes the puck down from the top of the circle, top of the blue line on a power play, essentially goes down like below the slot, below the hash marks, and then like from an insane angle just rips the puck and bar down. And you're just like, okay, the fact that he's shooting it with that velocity is impressive, but the fact that he's shooting it from that velocity, from that angle, and then still scoring, it just shows like it's not only a powerful shot, but it's also like a very accurate shot. So that's just dangerous to say the least. And then I had a stat about Michkov just in terms of shot per game that I thought was really interesting. And usually as a young player, you're not always going to take the most shots. It could be confidence based, but it obviously shows that Michkov, I mean, lacks no confidence in his game because he leads the KHL right now in shots per game, actually. So he has 3.7. Yeah, so he has 3.7 shots per game. So that's first in the league. Behind him are Boucher, who has 3.5, our old friend Jordan Wheel, who has 3.5, who's third in the league. K. Okulov, 3.5, and then Alistrov, also 3.3. So, I mean, just for a player of his age in a league full of veterans, like it's a veteran-heavy league, the KHL, really, right? To be leading the league in shots is just impressive to me. I just thought that was something good to bring up. But just kind of speaks to the fact that even though he is at such a young age, like he is a player on the ice who takes control, isn't afraid to dictate play, isn't afraid to take shots. And I think that's obviously something that you want to see from a young player in their development. Like he calls his shots, and I mean, he isn't afraid to kind of make the plays that he knows that he can make. And he's a confident player right now. And I think just for the Flyers to see that, he's continuing to play this way, even weeks after weeks have gone by in the KHL, it's only a good thing. And it still baffles me how Ska, loaned him out, right? Just with the pace that he's on, you think they couldn't use a player scoring at a point per game pace right now? I find it really funny, but
yeah. And Ska is actually 1 point. Oh, I'm sorry, they're tied with HC Sochi in their standings with one game in hand.
It's pretty funny, actually.
Could you imagine where HC Sochi would be without Michkov? They probably wouldn't. They're probably not a very good team like they were the previous year. He's probably the one keeping them, not the only one. I think they have some pretty good players. He's not the only one able to produce on that team, but
It certainly
without
helps.
him, they're probably even further out in their division. And I think this is kind of the shame about him playing with Sochi is he's probably not playing in the playoffs,
Yeah.
which is a shame and probably why he's going to want to get out of there maybe a little bit quicker and come over to the Flyers, who are an up and coming team in the league. And by the time he gets here, I don't know if it's going to be next year, but I definitely think for the last year of that contract, there's room to buy him out there.
Yeah.
And that wouldn't be too bad to bring over a 20-year-old Michkov, maybe 20 going on 21. Would be a really, really nice addition to this team who's at that point probably trying to hit another level. So be prepared for that because this kid is, I keep talking to people like in my life who don't know much about the Flyers about him. And I keep telling everybody about Gauthier and Michkov. And I'm trying to put it in perspective for how good Michkov is going to be. But I really don't think people understand what I'm talking about.
Crazy good.
This is going to be, look, it could always not happen this way, but at the projection he's on, we're talking about arguably the best player in the league, at least offensively. I don't know if he's going to do that, but again, to do that at 18 in the KHL or 19 now,
it's impressive
to do what he's doing. Again, we brought up the comparisons, and he is a full 2.5, sometimes 0.3 point per game higher than a lot of
Kucherovs, Kaprizovs, Ovechkins, guys that are elite level talents to another level.
This
right?
guy should have never been available to us at 7. And if he wasn't Russian, probably would have been competing with Bedard for the first overall in the draft. And quite frankly, if he got to play in those tournaments where he already outproduced Bedard in a previous tournament, he might have been the number 1. He could have potentially been the first overall pick in this draft, at least talent-wise. And we'll get Steve Kornianos back on here to talk about him. I've been thinking a lot about him lately. It might be time to bring him on again. And just to talk about Michkov alone, give us a prospect update in general. But just a crazy amount of talent that this kid has.
Yeah.
Crazy amount. Stupid. Just everybody watches Bedard. Get ready, NHL. You're going to be doing that with Michkov all over again. And the Flyers will be all over the NHL network and all that stuff just because of this kid alone. And if Cutter Gauthier is doing what he's doing and they have a Gauthier-Michkov combination with the young talent they have now,
it's going to be very dangerous.
It's going to be a dangerous team. Again, they still need another top defender, but you look at the way Sanheim's converted his game. I don't know about Bonk, but they have 2 first-round picks most likely coming up for this draft. Everything's coming together, in my opinion. You got a slew of young goalies. We have one of the best goalies, and I think he was named goalie of the week, Kolosov as well. Yeah. So again, slew of young talent still coming in very key positions, and Carter Hart is still elite. And I don't know, we could be in a lot worse position. For all those people who said this team's 5-6 years away, or 4 or 5, or whatever the hell their prediction was, I do not see that. I see a team on the precipice of turning their destiny in the other way.
Yeah, well, just getting the young players in, I think, down the line here. And I think, once you get them in and you kind of see, okay, this is the talent that we're injecting in, and what do we add around that to kind of bring that even more to the forefront? So I think the Flyers are in a really good space just in terms of where this is all at for them right now. You can't, like I said, 2 prospects, one of Gauthier's nature with the elite shot, then Michkov, who just has the overall prowess, add guys like that to your lineup, and it completely changes things, right? So,
and by the time Michkov gets here, the cap will be up probably $8.5 to $9 million from where it is today. We have a bunch of dead cap space that will be going away. We're probably going to buy out Peterson. I think there's a good chance of that. So maybe it'll be $1.6 million of dead cap space, but most of the bad contracts will be gone. Flyers don't really have any bad contracts outside of that. Even a older Sean Couturier playing his 2-way game in a number 2 role potentially,
it's a benefit.
None of this is a bad thing, and there are plenty of assets to make moves here. So I think the Flyers are really going in the right direction. They just need to play their cards right, and to not rush into it for one, and to time it properly, and to continue all the good things that they've been doing, and to continue moving forward, and let the Tortorella effect take effect, because it is working. For those who are down on it or don't see it, I see it. I've been watching this team for 25 years. I see it.
Well,
I see what's happening. Sorry, go ahead.
Just look at the team, before Tortorella became the coach. there's still similar players on the roster. Not everybody got traded away or it's not blown up. Like, I mean, there has been some significant kind of change here, but a lot of the guys that were still on the team, you know, when Tortorella became the head coach, you've seen improvements in their game. So
Yes,
it's a real thing, right?
exactly.
Like he can get more out of his players. So, and then you even add even more talented players to the mix. I think it's just, you know, everything's kind of trending in the right direction. Like you said, though, you don't want to jump the gun. You want to make, you know, the moves at the right point in time.
Right.
But I think, you know, everything's trending upwards here. So,
Yeah. I think we're 2 years away from seeing this team become what it really can be.
yeah,
But I
I
think
agree with
next year
that.
we're going to be flirting with that space where people are going to want to bring in a big name, and I think they should hold back on that one more year. Go with what you have, go with young talent, and then wait till you have a slew of cap space, and then go out and get yourself a top defender to add on
Yeah.
this team because you probably won't need much more than that at that point. All right, that's it for us. Vasili, anything you want to leave our audience with?
Not too much. Should have some articles coming out for Flyers Nitty Gritty. Just, you know, breaking down, you know, either certain players' performances or just where the team's at. So keep an eye out for that, you know, during the upcoming week here. But should be fun to get into some Flyers after dark, this week. So
Love it. Love it. And again, we'll have there'll be some late games going on here. We probably won't be doing any post games for that because it's going to be too late when those games end. But it is something we've talked about adding more separate from these videos, doing some post games, maybe after wins or whatever. So we have something to actually be excited about rather than be depressed about. But more content coming. All right. Again, thank you all so much. Please remember to like, subscribe, share, hit the bell for more notifications. Go follow us on Spotify and iTunes. Give us a rating as well. And again, shout out to Jim Steaks. Remember, you can go get their food on DoorDash right now. And they will be open sometime this year, I think. They were way later than we anticipated them reopening, but I'm sure that they'll be back open, especially if they're serving food already. Again, thank you all so much. Vasili, you are the man. We love you guys, and always stay